What is up, guys? Randomodium here with your Week 8 Fantasy LCS prediction video. In this video, I'm going to break down all of the matchups for NA and EU LCS for Week 8. And I will be talking about the matchups from Week 7. So if you haven't seen those matches and you don't want them spoiled, this is your spoiler warning. But the big takeaway from Week 7 were that there were a ton of upsets. Over on the NA side, Phoenix beat NRG. Then NRG came back and wound up beating Envy. CLG beat Cloud9, and then over on the EU side, we had Giants losing to both the Unicorns of Love and Splice. Then Splice went on to tie G2 in their matchup, which means that now Splice is in a commanding third place spot over in EU. H2K lost pretty solidly to both Fnatic and G2, which caused them to drop quite a bit. And then Roccat, they wound up losing to both their opponents, which is what I would expect. But they gave their opponent so many fantasy points, and that really kind of messed up a lot of the fantasy points this week. Was Roccat just fed a ton of points to their opponents. Though I do think that Week 8 is going to be a little bit more stable, so hopefully predictions are a little bit more on point this week. But I was looking at a lot of your guys' comments from last week, and it sounds like you guys want me to continue doing analysis videos for playoffs and for worlds. What I take that to mean is you want me to do more prediction videos like I do right now. Like you want me to predict who's going to win in the playoffs, who's going to do well in worlds, things like that, rather than doing like video highlights and breakdowns of team fights and things like that. It seems like my prediction videos are much more popular than the highlights or the breakdown videos after the fact. So yeah, just let me know if you think that's a good idea, and I'll probably be rolling out some of the playoff videos in the next couple days. Additionally, as the regular season comes to a close, I wanted to get your guys' opinions on the best of 2 and the best of 3 system that they added with this split. I honestly felt like the best of 2 was perfect and the best of 3 was too much. I mean, I really didn't mind the ties that we saw. I felt like that made sense, that, you know, if 2 really close teams played each other, that a tie should be possible. It shouldn't just be, you know, winner take all. And I definitely felt like watching 3 games potentially for all 10 of the matches for NA was just absurd. Like, it was near impossible for me to watch all of those matches every week. But at the very least, I hope that NA adopts a similar point system to EU, where the match winner will get 3 points, and if the losing team forces a third game, they get 1 point. Because right now, I don't feel like there's any differentiation between a team that just gets smashed 2-0 in NA and a team that has, you know, 3 really close, hard-fought games. And I feel like there should be a distinction between that, and that adds a lot more drama, and it makes it so that, you know, maybe a team isn't going to try and win the best of 3, but they're going to at least try and get 1 game off of, you know, one of the top teams. So let me know if you guys like that idea, and maybe I'll make a post on the forums or Reddit or something like that. So let's go into the summary for Week 8. This is the TLDR. If you guys can't watch the entire video, this is kind of the skinny version that you guys can use for your fantasy leagues. So your easy points this week are actually TSM, Immortals, Team Liquid, and Cloud9. I've got 4 teams for NA that are easy points. Over on the EU side, G2, Fnatic, and Giants are your easy points. The risky plays, there's only 2 on NA, CLG and Apex. And then for EU, the risky players you could possibly have higher risk, higher reward are Splice, H2K, Shaka, and Unicorns of Love. And then the teams that you want to avoid this week are Envy, NRG, Phoenix, Echo Fox, Origin, Vitality, and Roccat. And I'll break down who I think is going to be worthwhile as far as the risky plays are concerned. Here are my rankings. So NA is pretty stable. You can see that I now have CLG slightly higher than Cloud9 because CLG did upset Cloud9 last week. Phoenix has moved up a little bit, but for the most part, it's still pretty much the same. Over on EU, there's a ton more turmoil. G2 is definitely the top team. They're far and away the most stable. They haven't lost a match yet. They've tied a lot, but they have never lost. And then you've got kind of Fnatic, Splice, Giants kind of fighting in that 2 to 4 fourth spot range. And then the rest of EU is just a free for all. HGK, Shaka, Unicorns of Love, Vitality, Origin. On any given day, any of those teams can beat the other team. So it's just a complete free for all in kind of the bottom half of the EU. And then Rocket's definitely at the bottom. They're definitely the worst team in EU right now. So if you look at the crucial matchups this week, there's not that much going on the NA side. The big ones are CLG versus Team Liquid and Envy versus Cloud9. Envy has a really difficult week this week. If they wind up going 0-2 this week, like I think they're going to, that opens the door for Apex to possibly steal that last playoff spot from Envy. So that's why that matchup is really crucial for Envy. They need to have a very strong showing against Cloud9 because their other opponent this week is TSM. Over on the EU side, there's a ton of really crucial matchups because there's a couple different teams that are all within like a point or two of each other. So Fnatic versus Splice, Origins versus Giants, HUK versus Vitality, HUK versus Splice, Giants versus Vitality, and G2 versus Shaka. These are all just crucial matchups where every single point matters. So EU is going to be absolutely crazy this week. So let's get into the actual breakdown of the week. So just quick nomenclature. If the win, tie, or loss is in white, that means I think it's going to be a normal amount of game, normal amount of points. If it's in red, I think it's going to be a stomp. That usually means a lot less points for the losing team and a little bit less points for the winning team. And if the tie, win, loss is in blue, that means I think it's going to be a close game, which usually means more fantasy points but higher risk. And then finally, there's 2 letters next to each player's name. The first letter is what I thought they were going to be last week, and the second letter is what they actually were last week. And that allows you guys to track my performance week to week. So if we go into the teams, my S tier teams this week are TSM, Fnatic, G2, and Giants. Giants had a horrible week last week. I think they will rebound. This is a must-win week for them. If they do not perform well this week, they could lose their playoff spot. So they're either going to, step up or they're going to lose their playoff spot. And I think that they're going to step up and do well this week. For A tier, I have Immortals, Team Liquid, and Cloud9, who all should probably go 2-0 this week. And then for B tier, I have Splice, HUK, and Shaka. Splice is a very challenging week, but I still think that they will be able to get a decent amount of fantasy points. And there's a good chance that they could upset one of those 2 teams, or maybe even both. Splice is definitely very good at upsetting teams that they're not supposed to beat. C tier, I have Unicorns of Love, CLG, Apex, Origin, and Vitality. And then rounding out the D tier, I have Envy, NRG, Rocket, Echo Fox, and Phoenix. Moving on to top lane, my S tier top laners this week are Expect, Huni, Hanser, and Smitty J. Smitty J is definitely a little bit higher risk because they had such a poor week last week, but he also is high reward. He could be the top point scorer this week. Origin typically has very long, drawn-out games, which will allow Giants to get more fantasy points. And then Vitality has definitely shown some signs of brilliance that could lead to longer games, which would also result in more fantasy points. For A tier, I have Wonder, Lorlo, and Kikis. Even though I think that Splice has a very hard week this week, I think that a lot of the Splice players can rack up a lot of fantasy points because at the very least, the games are going to go long. I don't think that any of the games are going to be a stomp, which means that even if Splice tie or lose, they should get a decent amount of fantasy points. Kikis played out of his mind last week. He was only B tier, but he played really, really well. So I think he's going to do even better this week once he becomes more integrated into Fnatic. B tier, I have Impact, Ray, and Steve. Ray, I think, is going to have a difficult week with Apex, but even though Apex went like 0-2 last week, Ray put up just an amazing amount of fantasy points. So even though Apex has a difficult week this week, I think he should be able to put up a decent amount of fantasy points still. C tier, I have Odo, Vivasachi, Cabochard, Seraph, and Soaz. Cabo and Soaz did really well last week. I don't think that Vitality and Origin are going to do as well this week, which is definitely going to drop their fantasy point numbers. And then rounding a D tier, I have Darshan, Zig, Quash, Parang, and KFO. Moving on to the jungle, my S tier for jungle is Rainover, Trick, Trashy, and Dardoch. Like I've already said, Splice, very challenging week, but Trashy seems to excel in those type of situations. And then I think that Dardoch, he had kind of an off week last week. I think he's going to come back pretty strong and have a really solid week this week. A tier, Svenskeren, Xmithy, and Spirit. And then B tier, I have Meteos, Shrimp, and Gilius. I would expect Meteos to actually be performing better than he is. He definitely has the potential to be an S tier jungler, but he just hasn't been looking as good as he did earlier in the split. So right now I have him at B tier. Hopefully he can have a pretty strong showing this week because I think the Cloud9 has a pretty easy week this week. C tier, I have Maxlore, Move, Yankos, Amazing, and Santorin. Giants, I do expect them to go 2-0 this week, but Maxlore typically does not get that many fantasy points, even when Giants goes 2-0. Usually most of the fantasy points go over to the other members on Giants, so that's why he's in C tier. And then D tier, I have Inori, Proxen, Shook, Memento, who's a new jungler for Roccat, which I think was actually probably a really good decision because Airwalks was having a lot of trouble on Roccat, just making a lot of really poor decisions. And then Echo Fox had Kez playing last week. I don't know if that's a permanent roster change or not. So yeah, that's why there's an asterisk next to his name. All right, mid lane, my S tier is Pobelter, Phoenix, Knight, and Bjergsen. Phoenix played out of his freaking mind last week. Definitely looked like the Phoenix of old. And then this week, I think Liquid's going to have a pretty solid week as well. So definitely looking for him to be S tier. And I definitely think that Knight will rebound for Giants and have a much better week this week. A tier, I have Jensen, Senkux, and Fevabin. Fevabin has been struggling, actually. Even though Fnatic's been doing well, he just hasn't been putting up that many fantasy points. I think he'll do a little bit better this week and be more like A tier. B tier, I have Perks, Keen, and Fox. Perks has also been kind of one of those people where even though G2 has been doing really well, Perks has not been putting up that many fantasy points. I think B tier is a pretty safe spot to put him. He has definitely the potential to go up to A tier or S tier, but he has been more operating in the B tier kind of range. All right, for C tier, I have Exile, Nukeduck, Huhi, Ryu, and Power of Evil. Ryu actually had his worst week, I think, of the entire split last week. I think he'll rebound a little bit, but H2K has not been putting up that many fantasy points, so they're pretty low on the list. And then D tier, GBM, Froggen, Ninja, Betsy, and Pyrene. All right, move on to 80 carry. My S tier is Doublelift, Sunstar, Wild Turtle, and Reckles. Yeah, Fnatic definitely didn't put up that many fantasy points last week. I think they will rebound and he'll do better this week. A tier, I have Kabi, Sven, and Mr. Rallis. I don't think there's any surprises there. And then B tier, I have Fabi, Sneaky, and Veritas. Fabi, I think, is not... He's not living up to his potential yet. There's definitely much... He could be getting a lot more fantasy points than he's getting right now. I think he's been out of position a couple times. I'm hoping that this week he'll turn it on and at least be B tier. C tier, I have Police, Toaster, who is the new 80 carry for Origin. So the Xpeke is no longer going to be the 80 carry. Toaster is actually, very mechanically skilled, but just, not very experienced. So definitely going to be really good things coming from him probably next season. And he actually was S tier last week. But I don't think the Origin's going to do that well this week, so he bumps back down to C tier. Lod played really well for Envy despite a very challenging week. And I think he's going to have another challenging week this week. And then Steelback and Apollo rounding out the list. D tier, I have Stixay, Freeze, Mash, OHQ, and Keith. I don't think there's any surprises for that D tier. All right, moving on to support. For S tier, I have Biofrost, Adrian, Mithy, and Hustlin. I think all of these guys are going to have pretty strong weeks, 2-0 or 1-1. And then for A tier, I have Mickey X, Yellowstar, and Matt. Matt definitely didn't play as well as he could have probably last week. Same with Yellowstar. I think they'll get more fantasy points this week. And then for B tier, I have Spraddle, Hillisang, and Vander. Unicorn to Love actually got a lot of fantasy points last week. They have a harder opponent this week in G2, but they also are going against Rockcat, who puts up a lot of fantasy points for their opponents. So that's why I still have some of the Unicorns of Love people a little bit higher. Yeah, then Vander, he was doing much better earlier in the split. He kind of dropped off. I think he'll be back more around the B tier again. C tier, I have Kasing, Smoothie, Xpecial, Aframo, and Hybrid. Last week, Cloud9 had Smoothie play all of the games. I don't know if that's going to continue. If it does, then Smoothie might move up in fantasy points. Right now, I have him in C tier because I don't know if they're going to keep splitting games with Bunny with him. And then Kasing had a pretty strong showing with Vitality this week. He definitely has the potential to be, A tier again this week, but he's really, really high risk because they're going up against H2K and Giants this week. And then for the D tier, I've got Gate, Raze, Kiwi Kid, Hakuo, and Big. So yeah, in conclusion, your easy points this week, any of the players on TSM, Immortals, Team Liquid, Cloud9, G2, Fnatic, or Giants. People you want to avoid are the players on Envy, NRG, Phoenix One, Echo Fox, Origin, Vitality, and Rockcat. And then we discussed some of those risky players on CLG, Apex, Splice, H2K, Shaka, and Unicorns of Love. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you found it insightful, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the content on the channel, please subscribe. My goal, by the time that Season 7 starts, I would like to have at least 200 subscribers. So any help you guys can give me in that, I would greatly appreciate it. Please try to, share the videos with your friends, or if you like them, post them on whatever forums you visit. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It definitely helps me out. I hope you all have a great day. This is Randomonium signing off.